In the early morning hours of September 14, 1998, the janitor of Valewood Academy, a private boarding school nestled deep in the forested hills of Vermont, unlocked the main building and walked the long corridor toward the east wing, where Dormitory B was located. The old building creaked and groaned as it always did, the kind of sound that belonged to schools too old to still exist, with histories too tangled to explain. But that morning the janitor noticed something odd. Room 12B's door was wide open, and the lights were flickering inside. The room was supposed to house 3 students, all 11th graders, none of whom were anywhere to be found. On the beds, their belongings sat neatly folded, as if someone had packed for them. But in the center of the room, the janitor found a large pool of what appeared to be water, with a single leather-bound book floating on its surface. When he picked it up, the book was soaked, and inside it was filled with handwritten Latin phrases, pages of cryptic symbols, and in the back, a class roster with 3 names crossed out. Within 2 hours, the headmaster ordered Dormitory B locked, and within 2 days, the school declared the students had been expelled for misconduct. Their families were given non-disclosure agreements, and the official record claimed no such students had ever been enrolled. But 20 years later, the truth surfaced, and it was far more disturbing than anyone imagined. Valewood Academy had long been shrouded in secrecy, an elite institution catering to the children of the wealthy and powerful, with strict rules, mandatory uniforms, and a zero-tolerance policy for disobedience. But former students would later come forward with stories of strange punishments, including isolation periods in a section of the school called the lower rooms, where misbehaving students were sent for days at a time with no contact. Rumors circulated for decades that these rooms were once used by a secret religious order in the 1800s, and that Valewood was built atop their meeting place. The school denied all such claims, until the disappearance of the 3 students in 1998 forced questions no one could answer. NTHE 3 missing students. Henry Calloway, Martin Reese, and Thomas Bell had reportedly been caught exploring the basement levels of the school without permission. According to a confidential report leaked years later, the boys had found a locked room marked Sanctum and had picked the lock, entering a space filled with ancient religious artifacts, stone altars, and a large mural depicting hooded figures standing over children. One of the boys, Henry, had written in his journal, which was recovered and later published online, that they believed the room had once been used for rituals, possibly involving sacrifices, and that they were going to return at night to see what happens in the dark. They did, and none of them were seen again. And following their disappearance, Valewood staff sanitized the entire East Wing. Room 12B was stripped, painted, and reassigned. All student records were altered. Parents were paid off, silenced, and warned not to pursue further. One parent, Laura Calloway, fought back. She claimed the school had covered up the boys' deaths, that she had security footage showing her son entering the dormitory but never leaving, and that she had received an anonymous letter weeks later reading, "They sleep beneath the chapel. Stop digging." Laura went to the press. Within days, she was hit with a lawsuit from Vailwood, claiming defamation. Her case was dismissed. She vanished from public view shortly after. In 2018, construction began to expand the school chapel, and workers unearthed a hidden tunnel leading to a sealed room containing 3 sets of remains, dressed in Vailwood uniforms, alongside personal items belonging to Henry, Martin, and Thomas. Forensic analysis confirmed the identities: cause of death, asphyxiation. Nearby, a wall was engraved with Latin text, Obedientia per mortem, obedience through death. Vailwood Academy issued a brief statement. We acknowledge the tragic loss of 3 former students. The past is a lesson, and we have learned. No one was ever charged. And today, Room 12B remains locked. Former students claim that sometimes, in the middle of the night, water can be heard dripping onto the floor, and the sound of pages turning echoes through the walls. In 2005, nestled in the quiet suburbs of Ashford, England, St. Bridget's Catholic Girls' School held a reputation for discipline, excellence, and unshakable tradition. Behind the Gothic stone facade, the nuns who ran the school upheld strict moral codes, often rejecting modernity in favor of old methods, including corporal punishment, public confession, and, as was later revealed, forced isolation for students deemed spiritually unclean. For decades, the school's leadership deflected scrutiny, especially after the death of 14-year-old Emily Hargrave, a student who fell ill and never recovered in the spring of 1987. Officially, her death was attributed to pneumonia. But in 2005, a routine maintenance inspection uncovered a sealed chamber beneath the chapel, and within it, Emily's personal diary, wrapped in cloth, buried in a box along with a blood-stained uniform. The diary revealed a hidden practice carried out by the nuns, a method of ritualistic punishment called the cleansing silence, where girls were locked away for days without food or light, forced to pray until their voices gave out. Emily's final entries were desperate, frantic, and ultimately cut off mid-sentence. When this evidence came to light, the school's long-concealed history began to unravel. In the 1980s, St. Bridget's was known for high academic results, but former students recalled strange disappearances, where girls would suddenly be sent away, often after speaking out or resisting the sisters. Emily Hargrave, a bright but rebellious student, had reportedly questioned the nuns' practices, refusing to participate in public confessions and encouraging other girls to do the same. On March 12, 1987, she was called to the chapel after hours. It was the last time anyone outside the clergy saw her alive. NHER parents were told she had contracted an infection and died overnight. Her body was cremated, no autopsy was performed, and they were urged to, quote, forgive and accept God's will. At the time, no one thought to challenge it. But Emily's best friend, Claire Donovan, always doubted the story. In 2005, now an adult and working as a journalist, she returned to St. Bridget's during its renovation and secretly interviewed workers. One confided they had found a sealed trapdoor beneath the chapel altar. Claire demanded it be opened. What they found shocked the nation. Inside the hidden room, which had clearly not been entered in decades, they discovered chains bolted to the walls, a small wooden cot, and shelves filled with handwritten records. Student names, dates, and besides several names, the word cleaned. Claire's name was there. So was Emily's, marked failed. Emily's diary was wrapped in an old sheet beneath a loose floorboard. Its contents revealed systematic isolation of rebellious girls, forced to endure cleansing silence. Days in darkness, no food, no water, reciting prayers. Emily's last entry: "They say I will see God soon. I only see the dark." NTHE revelation caused nationwide outrage. Former students came forward, dozens confirming they had been subjected to similar punishments. Some recalled girls returning pale, changed, or in some cases, not returning at all. The Catholic Church disavowed the actions, but no charges were ever filed against the sisters, most of whom were deceased or untraceable. NST Bridget's was permanently closed. The chapel was demolished, but to this day, locals report seeing a girl in a blood-stained uniform standing at the edge of the ruins, whispering prayers, her voice barely audible until it isn't. In the rugged mountains of Koyasan, Japan, a remote monastery known as Tenjin Institute once operated a prestigious boys' boarding school where students were trained in a strict mixture of academics, martial arts, and Zen discipline. Hidden among centuries-old pines and shrouded in mist, Tenjin cultivated a reputation for order and obedience. Its students expected to adhere to silent prayer hours, strict cleansing rituals, and the mysterious tradition known only as the 7 Steps of Purity. In 1993, the school abruptly closed after a devastating landslide buried part of the compound. The official death toll listed 4 students and 2 instructors, but years later, journalists uncovered police reports that contradicted the school's claims. The landslide, it seemed, had revealed a mass grave beneath the training grounds, containing more than 30 bodies, many showing signs of blunt trauma and binding marks. Tenjin's dark secret, a brutal initiation ritual that left students dead, buried, and forgotten, had finally come to light. NFOR generations. Tenjin had been known as a school of honor, with wealthy families from across Japan and abroad sending their sons to be molded into disciplined leaders. Yet former students described it differently: a prison in the mountains, where failure to comply with even minor rules led to isolation, beatings, or banishment to a place known as the Cold Hall. This building, old and crumbling, sat at the edge of the school grounds, near the cliffside. Students feared it. No one returned from it the same. In early 1993, 15-year-old Renji Takahashi, a student from Tokyo, began writing letters home that disturbed his parents. In them, he described being forced into freezing water baths, days of forced silence, and strange midnight rituals led by senior students in black robes. He mentioned the 7 steps, describing them as tests of the soul, but in one letter he wrote, "Step 6, the pit. We are made to dig. I don't want to know why." His parents grew alarmed, but school officials claimed Renji was exaggerating due to homesickness. 1 month later, Renji was declared missing, supposedly caught in the landslide that devastated the school. But his body was never found. In 2007, journalist Aya Mori, investigating abandoned religious schools, hiked to the ruins of Tenjin and found a sealed police report left behind in a local official's office. The report, marked classified, contained photos of multiple skeletons found beneath the landslide debris, none matching the identities of the 4 students said to have died. The photos showed hand-carved markers, each bearing student numbers, not names. Several bodies had hands bound, others fractured skulls. A separate document referenced non-sanctioned rituals, performed by instructors as part of an unrecorded graduation ceremony. Mori's expose led to national outcry. Survivors came forward, confirming that the 7 steps culminated in Step 7, erasure, where failing students were taken to the cliff, forced to dig their own shallow graves, and executed in the name of spiritual purification. It was never documented, and families were told the students transferred or left voluntarily. NTHE Monastery refused comment. The grounds remain abandoned. Locals say that after heavy rains, the earth sometimes gives way, revealing bones in the soil, and wooden tablets, marked only with numbers, rising like teeth from the mud. In 2012, nestled in the heart of rural Arkansas, the Harmony Falls Charter School boasted a modern campus, a progressive curriculum, and a highly selective admissions process that attracted families from neighboring states. But beneath the pristine reputation, Harmony Falls harbored a system of unlicensed discipline, operated by a secretive staff and overseen by a man named Principal Gerard Miles, whose military background and strict philosophy had earned him both admiration and fear. For years, rumors of abuse at the school surfaced only in whispers, dismissed by local authorities, ignored by parents seduced by glowing test scores. That all changed when 15-year-old Eliza Carmichael ran away from the school and revealed what she called the silence room, a concrete cell where students were confined for days, subjected to sleep deprivation, psychological torment, and forced to write confession journals that were later shredded and burned. Her story set off a chain of investigations that would reveal dozens of victims, a school policy of institutional cruelty, and a community complicit in hiding its darkest truth. Eliza was admitted to Harmony Falls in the fall of 2011, a shy but bright student with a history of anxiety. Her parents believed the school's resilience-focused program would help her thrive. But within weeks, Eliza began to change. She grew withdrawn, visibly tired, and jumpy. When she returned home for winter break, she had scratches on her arms, and when questioned, she whispered, "It was my turn." Her parents pressed for answers, but Eliza remained silent until she ran away from the school in March, barefoot, carrying nothing but a spiral notebook, which she clutched so tightly the pages tore. She was found hours later, huddled behind a gas station dumpster, and taken to the hospital. There, she finally spoke, and what she described shocked not only her family, but the entire state. Eliza claimed that Harmony Falls operated an unofficial punishment system, overseen by Principal Miles and a group of senior staff, known as the Conduct Board. Students who misbehaved were taken to a basement wing, off limits to most staff, and locked in the silence room, a concrete cell with no windows, a metal chair, and a speaker through which white noise was played continuously. Meals were irregular. Lights were kept on 24/7. Students were given journals and forced to write confessions repeatedly, told they could only leave when they accepted their flaws. Liza had spent 4 days there, punished for disruptive eye contact during assembly. Initially, the school denied everything. Miles claimed Eliza was, quote, and delusional, but the media storm that followed forced state officials to launch a formal investigation. When police searched the basement, they found the silence room exactly as Eliza described, and in a locked cabinet nearby, over 100 shredded notebooks, partially reconstructed by forensic teams. The entries were chilling. "I am a liar. I must be erased. There is no noise. There is only me. I saw the wall move. I am sorry." And over 30 former students came forward. Some were now adults, still traumatized. One claimed he was locked in the room for 6 days after failing a math test. Another said students were made to watch video loops of their own misbehavior, with voices of staff mocking them over a speaker. No parents were ever told. Principal Miles was arrested but never served time. He died of a stroke before trial. Harmony Falls was shut down, its board disbanded. Today, the building stands empty. Locals say at night, from outside, you can still hear a low static sound, and if you press your ear to the wall, you'll hear scratching, as if someone is still inside, trying to write. In 1977, the quiet town of Wilkins Point, Maine, was jolted awake by the sudden closure of its only high school, Wilkins Point Academy, following what local authorities called an unfortunate accident involving hazardous materials. For years, the campus remained fenced off, its buildings slowly consumed by overgrowth. But the truth behind the school's abrupt end remained buried until 2003, when a group of urban explorers entered the ruins and discovered hidden rooms, medical equipment, and most disturbingly, personal files documenting a secret behavioral experiment carried out on students by their own teachers. The experiment, known internally as Project Shepherd, aimed to condition obedience through a combination of drug trials, isolation techniques, and neurological monitoring, all without parental consent. Dozens of students were affected. Some vanished, and one teacher, Dr. Jonathan Creel, disappeared days before the scandal broke. He was never seen again. Wilkins Point Academy had once been praised for its progressive curriculum and innovative teaching methods, with many parents attracted by its promise of, quote, molding leaders through discipline. Behind the scenes, however, the school had received private funding from an unknown foundation to pilot Project Shepherd, overseen by Dr. Creel, who presented himself as a behavioral psychologist conducting non-invasive studies. In reality, Creel and his team selected students based on psychological profiles, particularly those labeled non-conforming or emotionally volatile. These students were invited to join the Leadership Development Program, and once enrolled, their lives changed forever. Participants were removed from regular classes and housed in a converted wing of the school, stripped of personal items and required to wear identical gray uniforms. Surveillance was constant. Students underwent weekly meditation sessions where they were injected with a substance described as a focus enhancer. In truth, it was a sedative-laced stimulant which dulled emotional responses and increased suggestibility. Teachers recorded daily logs, documenting behavior changes, with chilling entries like, Subject 14 no longer questions authority, compliant, minimal emotional output. NBUT cracks formed quickly. In late 1977, Subject 8, a 16-year-old named Michael Avery, became violently ill after a session. He reported hallucinations, memory loss, and said he felt watched even in his dreams. Medical staff dismissed his concerns. Days later, Michael vanished. His parents were told he had run away. His room was emptied. His name was erased from the school registry. Shortly after, other students began breaking down, exhibiting violent outbursts, catatonia, or complete emotional detachment. One student attempted suicide, carving the word shepherd into her arm. Finally, a young teacher's aide, Lucy Mendel, blew the whistle, contacting state authorities. But by the time investigators arrived, the school was empty. Files had been burned. Rooms were cleaned. Dr. Creel had vanished. All that remained was a sealed lab, behind which police found medical beds, restraint equipment, and recordings of students during sessions, sitting motionless, murmuring phrases like, "I follow, I follow." And public outrage was swift. Lawsuits followed. Survivors of the program later reported lifelong trauma, with some unable to form normal emotional responses. The funding foundation was never identified. The case was quietly closed. And today, the ruins of Wilkins Point Academy still stand. Graffiti covers its walls, but some explorers claim that deep inside, the leadership wing remains untouched, and that if you walk past room 4A, you'll hear a voice whisper, Subject 14, still compliant. In 1991, in the windswept plains of Saskatchewan, Canada, the Brackenridge Institute for Boys sat alone at the edge of a pine forest, miles from the nearest town. Founded in the 1930s as a reform school, Brackenridge was intended to house troubled youth from across the province. But over the decades, it became a place whispered about, with locals referring to it as the school that swallowed boys. Between 1950 and 1990, over 40 students disappeared from Brackenridge. The official explanation? Runaways. But no bodies were ever found, and no investigations ever stuck. In 1991, a devastating fire destroyed the main dormitory. What firefighters uncovered inside finally exposed a decades-long pattern of abuse, torture, and unmarked graves, all covered up by school officials and provincial authorities. The key figure at the center of it all was Headmaster Alan Greaves, a man revered in public but feared behind Brackenridge's stone walls. N.G. Reeves had served at Brackenridge for nearly 30 years, known for his stern demeanor, icy gaze, and belief in breaking boys to build men. Under his rule, Students endured military-style discipline, public punishments, and a mysterious ritual known as the box, a small, coffin-like structure said to be used for discipline in darkness. Survivors of Brackenridge would later testify that misbehavior, even minor, often led to solitary confinement in the box, which was located beneath the old chapel, in a cold stone room known only as, quote, the hole. One survivor, Mark Eldon, who attended Brackenridge in 1989, described a week-long punishment in the box after he was caught stealing bread. In a sworn affidavit he wrote, "There was no light, no sound, except your own breathing. You lost time. Some boys screamed to be let out. Others never came back." Mark escaped the school after the fire, and his testimony was crucial in bringing Brackenridge's secrets to light. NTHE fire, which was initially blamed on faulty wiring, was later determined to have originated in the chapel basement, likely set by a student. Firefighters battling the blaze discovered a hidden corridor beneath the chapel floor, leading to a network of narrow cells, many containing decaying personal belongings, shoes, notebooks, even a child's stuffed animal, preserved by the cold. In one cell, they found skeletal remains, later identified as a boy who had gone missing in 1973. When the remains were brought to the surface, Headmaster Greaves disappeared. His office was found empty, the contents burned, and a journal half destroyed in the ashes. The legible pages referenced the doctrine of correction, a set of rules Greaves believed were divinely inspired, justifying his harsh methods. In one entry he wrote, "Pain is the path to purity. The lost boys are cleansed, not buried." Public outrage forced the provincial government to launch a full investigation. It was discovered that Brackenridge had illegally cremated bodies, falsified records, and paid off families to remain silent. No charges were filed. Greaves was never found. And today, the Brackenridge ruins are off-limits, but trespassers report strange noises, especially near the old chapel site. Some claim to hear knocking from beneath the earth, and the low echo of a boy's voice crying, "Let me out, please, just let me out." In the fog-drenched hills of Dorset, England, the Hartmoor School for Young Ladies was once a prestigious finishing school, boasting a lineage of aristocratic alumni and an air of rigid, Victorian elegance. But in 1958, Hartmoor abruptly closed its gates for good after a student, Isabella Wren, was found dead under mysterious circumstances. Her body discovered posed in the main dining hall, surrounded by dozens of hand-carved dolls, each one eerily resembling a different student. The school claimed natural causes, but the official death certificate listed no cause at all, only the words, "unresolved anomaly." In the following weeks, 3 more students vanished. What was quietly whispered, and later proven, was that Hartmoor had been the site of ritualistic practices, spearheaded by headmistress Catherine Delphine, who believed in spiritual perfection through mimicry, a philosophy that blurred the line between discipline, identity, and control. Catherine Delphine was known for her obsession with order. Her methods were old-fashioned, her speech formal, and her eyes always searching for imperfection. She ran Hartmore like a clockwork machine, where girls were taught not just etiquette, but absolute submission to silence, stillness, and ritual. Every morning began with mirror hour, where students were made to stand in silence before full-length mirrors, repeating mantras such as, "I reflect perfection, I am stillness." Delphine's personal quarters were off limits, but rumors circulated of strange objects, rows of dolls, wax figures, and a wall lined with student portraits, faces scratched out. Isabella Wren was a gifted pianist and known for her rebellious spirit. She often clashed with Delphine, refusing to partake in mirror hour and once publicly mocking the headmistress's rules. Shortly before her death, Isabella confided in friends that Delphine had summoned her at midnight, demanding she perform in the chapel, alone, while the headmistress watched in silence. After that night, Isabella claimed to feel followed by herself, reporting that her reflection moved on its own and that she found a doll under her bed, carved to look just like her. When Isabella's body was discovered, posed unnaturally, arms folded, eyes wide open, the school called it an accident. A fall, perhaps. But the dolls surrounding her were no accident. Each was tagged with a name, and authorities later identified that each missing girl had a corresponding doll stored in Delphine's private study. During the investigation, the police found hidden passages behind the headmistress's quarters leading to a secret chamber. Inside were shelves of dolls, jars of preserved hair, and a large mirror with a cracked surface, inscribed with the phrase, "To be still is to be eternal." Delphine was arrested but found unfit for trial, committed to an asylum where she died weeks later, reportedly still whispering her mantra. Hartmore was shuttered, the grounds abandoned. Today, urban explorers report mirrors that fog over without touch, and in one room, a lone doll remains eyes fixed on the door, as if waiting for someone to come back. In the industrial city of Newark, New Jersey, the Eastbridge Vocational Academy stood for decades as a last-chance institution for troubled teens. Behind its high fences and steel gates, students learned trades like welding, carpentry, and auto repair, skills meant to steer them away from crime. But what few knew was that Eastbridge was also the site of illegal experimentation, where a group of staff led by Principal Howard Gelman conducted unauthorized psychological conditioning, using students as test subjects in a brutal attempt to, quote, rewire criminal behavior. The program, known only as the Correctional Mirror Project, aimed to suppress aggression and induce compliance through a combination of visual stimuli, isolation, and chemical inducement, methods that caused irreversible trauma and, in some cases, permanent psychological damage. When the truth came out in 1996, Eastbridge was shut down, and Gelman vanished before charges could be filed. But the damage had already been done. NTHE Mirror Project began quietly in 1993 under the guise of a behavioral correction program for students deemed high risk. Selected students were removed from classes and placed into a separate dormitory where they underwent daily reflection sessions. These sessions involved sitting in front of a one-way mirror for hours, while a staff member, usually Gelman, watched from the other side, manipulating lights, sounds, and visual stimuli, including flickering images of violence, authority figures, and flashes of the student's own face, distorted and morphed. Students reported feeling dissociated, unable to distinguish their own identity from the images on the glass. To intensify the effects, students were administered a, quote, calming agent, later revealed to be a powerful psychoactive drug unapproved for human use. One former student, Luis Ramos, described the sensation as falling into the mirror, saying he began hearing his own voice arguing with itself and eventually saw himself on the other side of the glass, smiling when he wasn't. And as months passed, students in the program exhibited severe behavioral shifts. Some became mute, others showed violent outbursts, attacking their own reflections. One boy, Jamal West, clawed at his face, screaming, "Make him stop looking at me." He later took his own life. His suicide note simply read, "I was never me again." NTHE program remained secret until a teacher's aide, Monica Havers, reported her concerns to local media. She provided photos, internal memos, and a recording of Gelman discussing the project's goal. If we can erase the self that committed the crime, we can rebuild a better one. It's not torture, it's progress. Public outrage followed. A state investigation uncovered dozens of affected students, many now institutionalized. Eastbridge was closed, but Gelman disappeared. Rumors persist that he fled overseas. Today, the Eastbridge facility is abandoned. In the mirror room, the glass still stands. Visitors claim that when you stand before it long enough, your reflection starts to move differently, and if you look closely, your face isn't quite your own. In the remote Appalachian town of Gray Hollow, West Virginia, the Merrow Creek boarding school had long been forgotten by the outside world. Built in 1921 and abandoned by 1974, the red brick building still stands, choked by ivy and shadowed by tall pines. But what truly haunts the town is not the structure, but the memory of the missing. For between 1960 and 1973, 9 children disappeared from Merrow Creek, their names carved into the school's crumbling wall by grieving parents. Official records listed them as runaways, but locals whispered about the bell ritual, a punishment used by the school's founder, Reverend Elias Wren, a former preacher turned headmaster who believed that sin must be cast out by silence, confinement, and submission to the sound of God's judgment. The bell. Reverend Wren, a gaunt man with piercing eyes, ran Merrow Creek with religious zeal, enforcing strict codes of behavior and demanding absolute. Students were roused each morning by the toll of an iron bell in the courtyard, 7 rings for waking, 3 rings for prayer, 1 ring for silence. The bell tower became a symbol of fear, for it also signaled punishment. When a student misbehaved, Wren would ring the bell once at night, and that student would vanish until the following morning, returning pale, silent, and often changed. NTHE punishment took place in what was called the bell chamber, a small, locked room beneath the bell tower, accessible only through a narrow stair. Inside was a chair, a single candle, and a speaker wired to the bell, through which reverberations were piped continuously. Survivors later described losing track of time, experiencing auditory hallucinations, and hearing voices, sometimes their own, pleading, praying, or screaming. One girl, Catherine Holt, sent a letter to her parents in 1972 that read, "When the bell rings, we lose ourselves. I saw him again. He was standing beside me, but I was in the chair." Her parents never received the letter. It was found in her dorm after she disappeared. Her bed remained made, her clothes untouched. NTHE truth began to unravel when a new teacher, Richard Vale, discovered a ledger in Reverend Wren's office. A list of names and dates, each ending with the word purified. Alarmed, Vale reported his concerns, but by the time authorities arrived, Wren was gone. The bell chamber was sealed. Inside, police found 9 small wooden crosses, a stack of children's clothes, and a journal belonging to Wren. In one entry, he wrote, "They must be emptied of sin. The bell will cleanse. I do not bury them. They are not gone. They are echoes now." N.W. Wren was never found. The school was closed. Locals claim that when the wind is right, you can still hear the bell ringing, though its rope has long since rotted away. And if you walk past the old tower at dusk, they say you'll see shadows at the windows, staring down in silence. In 1982, nestled in the outskirts of Boulder, Colorado, the Morningside School for Gifted Youth was lauded as a beacon of academic excellence and innovation. Funded by a mix of private donors and state grants, the school promised to nurture the brightest minds of tomorrow through advanced curriculum, independent study, and a unique program called sensory alignment. But behind its polished image, Morningside hid a chilling reality. Its gifted program was, in fact, an experimental sensory deprivation project, designed and overseen by its enigmatic founder, Dr. Elias Mercer, a neurologist turned educator who believed that true genius could be unlocked by suppressing external distractions permanently. What began as academic enrichment devolved into medical abuse, leaving several students with lasting trauma, and in at least one case, dead. NDR. Mercer was a charismatic figure, revered for his TED-style talks on neuroplasticity and intelligence. He believed that sensory overload was the greatest barrier to brilliance. His theory: remove the senses, remove the noise, and the mind will bloom. Morningside's top students, selected through IQ tests and psychological profiling, were enrolled in Phase 1 of the Sensory Alignment Program, voluntary at first. Students were placed in isolation pods, deprived of sound and light for short intervals, encouraged to meditate and, quote, focus inward. But within weeks, the sessions grew longer, the pods became sealed chambers, and Mercer's methods escalated. Parents were told the program was akin to advanced meditation, enhancing focus and cognitive skills. In reality, students were subjected to hours of total sensory deprivation, monitored by EEG machines and cameras, with Mercer recording every reaction. The program's logs, later uncovered, described hallucinations, personality fractures, and mental collapses. One entry read, "Subject 3 speaks to unseen entity, claims to be listening with the mind, possible breakthrough." Subject 3 was Rachel Lynn, a 14-year-old prodigy in mathematics. After her 6th session, Rachel began refusing to speak, instead drawing spiral patterns over and over. Her drawings became obsessive, covering her walls, notebooks, even her skin. Mercer documented her as, quote, "opening." One night, Rachel vanished. School officials claimed she ran away. Her parents were told to remain quiet due to ongoing investigations. Her disappearance never made the news. Mercer pressed forward. In late 1982, during a session with Subject 6, a power outage caused the isolation chamber to malfunction, locking the student inside for over 12 hours. When staff finally accessed the pod, they found the boy unconscious, with temporary blindness and deafness, and his fingers worn raw from scratching the walls. He never returned to school. NTHE scandal broke when a whistleblower, nurse technician Amy Dells, leaked documents, video footage, and audio recordings to local media. One recording featured Mercer speaking calmly, "We are no longer teaching, we are tuning. These minds will vibrate beyond us." Public outrage led to investigations. The school was closed. Mercer vanished. NTO this day. Rachel Lynn remains missing. Her parents maintain a website dedicated to her memory. Urban explorers who trespass at the Morningside ruins report sealed pods still in place, and in one room spirals etched into the floor, circling endlessly toward a point no one can quite find. In the windswept coastal town of Aberroe, Scotland, the St. Marlowe's School for Boys stood on a cliff's edge, overlooking the roaring North Sea. Founded in the early 1800s, it was both an elite boarding school and a place where secrets were stitched into stone. For over a century, tales of students lost to the cliffs, strange rituals in the chapel, and a sealed room beneath the headmaster's quarters pervaded local folklore. But in 1972, a government inquiry, sparked by a series of student disappearances and the sudden collapse of headmaster Reginald Vaughn during a school ceremony, uncovered a labyrinthine web of abuse, occult practices, and the systematic grooming of students into a clandestine society known only as the Gray Circle. Vaughn, a man of lineage and pedigree, had served as headmaster for nearly 3 decades. Under his tenure, St. Marlowe's thrived in reputation, but was marked by unusually high student turnover. Boys vanished, always written off as runaways, even when their belongings remained untouched and no trace was found. Vaughn attributed such disappearances to the stress of academic rigor, but survivors would later testify that these students had been selected for initiation. NTHE Gray Circle, according to testimonies, was an underground society within the school, operating with Vaughn's full knowledge. Entry required the offering, a week spent beneath the school and the stone room, where initiates were isolated, fed only bread and water, and instructed to contemplate the shadow of the self. During this time, boys were forced to recite ancient texts, and in some cases, participate in ritual acts meant to bind their loyalty. Several survivors recounted branding ceremonies where a circle of gray ash was placed on their palms, burning their skin. One boy, Thomas Gilroy, later testified, "You gave them your silence, your pain, and they promised you'd never be forgotten." The truth began unraveling when Gilroy, then a teacher at a nearby school, broke down during a lecture and confessed to the police what had happened to him and others. His testimony led to a raid on St. Marlo's, where investigators found hidden rooms, ritual artifacts, and a sealed ledger containing names of initiates dating back to 1843. More chillingly, in a hidden chamber beneath the school, they found bones, later confirmed to be human, and a circle of black candles, half melted around a stone pedestal etched with Latin, "Lux et umbra," light and shadow. Nuline, found in his quarters, had died of a heart attack days earlier. His journal, recovered posthumously, contained detailed accounts of rituals, dreams of the sea calling, and entries describing the Gray One, a figure he claimed demanded the devotion of the pure. N.S.T. Marlowe's was shut down permanently. The building still stands, abandoned and battered by sea winds. Locals say that on stormy nights, you can hear chanting from the cliffs and see a circle of dim lights moving in the school's chapel, flickering like candles long since extinguished. In the dry desert town of San Esteban, New Mexico, the Carmichael Institute was once a state-run facility for children with behavioral disorders. Opened in 1954 and quietly shuttered in 1983, the Institute promised compassionate correction for troubled youth. But long after its closure, former residents began to speak out, revealing that Carmichael was a house of horrors, a place where children were experimented on, silenced, and sometimes vanished without a trace. At the center of the accusations was Dr. Leonard Abner, the Institute's head psychiatrist, who believed that delinquency could be cured by erasing memory, effectively making children forget who they were, and in the process, who had hurt them. NDR. Abner's theory, published only in obscure journals, posited that identity reprogramming through electroconvulsive therapy, hypnosis, and sleep deprivation could produce new minds. His goal, to create model citizens by wiping away trauma, disobedience, and personality flaws. At Carmichael, these experiments began under the label Project Homefire, a term that would later become synonymous with institutional abuse. Children between ages 6 and 14 were subjected to daily memory alignment sessions, during which they were shown looped images, forced to listen to whispers through headphones, and given heavy sedatives. Many were restrained for hours. According to one survivor, Maya Delgado, aged 12 at the time, "We weren't taught, we were erased. They called us by numbers, not names. They said names made us remember wrong." NTHE Institute also employed sleep rooms, windowless cells where children were placed in isolation for days, with speakers playing soft lullabies that gradually became distorted, repeating strange phrases. One tape, recovered from the ruins years later, looped the line, "You are safe. You are blank. You are new." In 1982, a young boy named Noah Gray died in one of the sleep rooms. His death was officially ruled cardiac arrest, but his autopsy showed no heart defect, only signs of severe stress and fear. That same year, a staff member, Elisa Hart, reported her concerns to state authorities. Her report included photographs of restraint marks, unlicensed medical equipment, and a journal kept by Dr. Abner, filled with disturbing entries. The children resist forgetting. The past clings to them like skin. It must be peeled away. NTHE investigation was swift. Carmichael was shut down. Dr. Abner's medical license revoked. He vanished before trial. Survivors were dispersed. Records sealed. But rumors persist that Abner continued his work under aliases, perhaps even abroad. Today, the Carmichael Institute's ruins are sun-bleached and crumbling. Explorers report walls still covered in childlike drawings, many showing figures with no faces or children holding hands with dark silhouettes. In the basement, one sleep room remains intact, the speaker still wired and faintly. If you listen closely, it hums. "You are new. You are safe. Sleep now."